Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Mall Street Journal, the American Rugby Pod that gives you all the latest news and reviews for the MLR, the WER, the women's and the men's Eagles, and whatever else we can find as we cast our eyes across USA Rugby. We are part of the Wrap Network and can be found on all your usual platforms. So if you haven't already, give us a like or subscribe. Send us some esoteric rugby merch with a signed $100 bill telling us how lovely we are. As always, I'm David Lawrence. I'm with the full crew today. We've got Kolya down in the Lone Star State. Kolya, what did you think about the Spurs draft, by the way? Are they crafting a team around Wembanyama that you can look forward to?
One can only hope for the city of San Antonio and my students, but who knows? New coach after years of Popovich. We'll see.
Decades.
Yeah.
Julia, we're very happy to have you back. How did it go playing for the Molly Maguires last week in New Jersey?
Well, I mean, I'm sure as loyal viewers and knowers of my history would figure, it was the last sevens team on Earth, and I was one of three people remaining on the planet. Got to be on a sevens team. It was lovely. I wasn't winded at all, and I scored.
And
All
you
of these
stretched,
things are true and real.
and you
And I
stretched before and after.
I stretched before and after. I cooled down. I only drank electrolytes, no
Yes.
alcohol.
So much Gatorade was consumed.
So much Gatorade.
But seriously, anything to report from your week off? Get up to anything good?
I mean, nothing rugby, unfortunately. But for other American listeners, I got to go up to Delaware. There's a collection of beaches up there, Rehoboth and Bethany and Lewis Beach and all that. And I got to bounce around there for a little bit. It was nice.
Nice.
Yeah, storm most of the time, but anybody who is used to the Mid-Atlantic or New England knows the feeling.
Well, speaking of rain, Kolya, what about you? What's been quite literally floating your boat this
please.
week?
There's been a lot of rain here. Our international listeners might not be following as much, but the Guadalupe River flooded last Friday, and there's been a lot of just carnage.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there have been fatalities.
Yes, and when we get to our grassroots corner, I'll go more in depth on how the rugby community is reacting to this.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
For me, I've just taken the second of the three classes, I should say, in Dallin Stanford's online course for learning about rugby comms. It was such a great day today. I was talking to Kolya, Julia, before you hopped on. The game they had us sort of practice on was the Black Ferns versus the Wallaroos final from LA from the Sevens last season. I was so cocky. I was like, I've seen this match like 7 times. This is going to be easy. No, it was not easy. It was super hard, especially because he has us kind of jump in as lead comms, and then he switches your role and makes you the color person instead. It was a great experience. He's got more, iterations of the course coming up in August, so I can't recommend it enough. He's just great. So our tradition here is to start with some news. Kolya, you've kind of been our go-to thus far. Got any news for us this week?
So the USA Eagles have been playing, but we've also got a lot of USA Eagles youth teams on tours all over the place. This past weekend, the US under-18s started their tour of Argentina with a win against Rosario Central.
Wow.
And tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., the USA under-23s continue their tour of South Africa.
Wow.
And that is, if you want to watch it, found on the YouTube channel Global Sports Network.
Oh, nice call. So the USA men's Eagles, we're back in action this weekend, but before we get to that, there's a bit of an elephant in the room kind of stomping around. The WER final, the Legacy Cup, played out not this past weekend, but the weekend before. We all agreed to wait till Julia was back to discuss it. Let's see. We can't hear Julia yet. I wonder if she can still hear us. We can just wait a sec. Kolya, I've obviously got you lined up as well. What were your takeaways from this game? This is normally where I would ask, did the right team win? But I think we kind of all know the answer.
Yeah, so the WER final ended 53-13 in favor of Denver Onyx against the New York Exiles. And the first half was really, really close until the very end of the half, where in the last 4 minutes, Denver scored 2 tries. And in my notes, I have it down as Denver gets a knockout try in the red of the first half. And that, unfortunately, is how the second half went,
Yeah.
where New York barely got a sniff.
You know, it was the two best teams. I hate to admit it. I've been bagging on New York all year, but that's just because I live in Boston. And oh, good, Julia's coming back in. I think rejoining might help. But it, halfway through the season, I would have said it was inevitable that the final was going to be Denver versus my Banshees. But I think as things went on, we all kind of knew. Um, it's been fun bagging on the New York team all year just because it's fun. But of course, now they're back and they're doing great. And of course, that made Julia happy too. Julia, are we back? Do we have our audio back?
Yes, I'm so sorry about that.
Okay, we've got her back. Julia, give us your reactions to this game. The finale, it was a great game. Like Koya already said, it kind of got away at the end, but I think we probably all saw that coming. Give us your reactions. What did you think of the inaugural WER season and this great finale?
That's exactly what I think of it in terms of the finale. Unfortunately, a bit predictable. It's something we've discussed on the pod before, about what we're looking at in terms of the Onyx versus everyone else. And I mean, we've even kind of lightly talked about it in MLR as well. But sometimes it feels like some teams are just set up for a different kind of success than everybody else. And there were a lot of challenges with putting this league together. So I'm really not disappointed. I'm
Yeah.
really happy with how it went. Coy really said it best. It was really more that it got away at the end. I was still happy with it. It was a really entertaining first half. Second half, even though you saw that it was definitely getting away from New York, still really enjoyable to watch. And overall, in terms of how I feel about the league and how it went, I think for an inaugural season, that was pretty successful. I really regret that the broadcasting went the way it did. That said, other new leagues have had worse debuts.
Definitely.
And especially we as rugby fans, and especially we as international rugby fans have long experienced the difficulties of getting to watch it all. I think that will probably be on the top of their list going into the next season. I know that they're taking it seriously. I still feel good because I feel very much so that you got from the league that they're taking it seriously. This isn't just throwing together what they could. They care about the product they put out, and that feels really nice. Especially if a listener is familiar with WPL, the movement that there's been since has been really encouraging. We talked about it a bit.
Legacy Cup is an apt name for sure.
Yeah, I think so. There have been so many iterations of this competition where it has been much harder to play for the teams, and I really appreciate that several Eagles have come out recently and they've talked a lot about it. I actually tip my hat to Canada for kind of starting that conversation, but definitely the North American teams have come out and started talking about the challenges of playing at elite level for both of our teams. And certainly playing for WER is also a challenge. We've gone over it a lot. We don't need to hammer that point home, but it takes a lot to compete, to have to eschew jobs and family commitments and all of that. Everybody who's participating in this has had to do it, but
yeah.
In
a way, when there's so few teams, it almost re-emphasizes the distances involved too.
It really does. And especially when you talk and there has been beginning chat about expanding the league. Of course, we're definitely going to need to. There is a huge you know what? No, I take that back. In light of how some other USA women's sports are, it's pretty great that we have two teams that really are in the center of the country. Sure, there are places that are even less like traditional rugby spots that you could go into and it would be really innovative, but also be really hard. That said, they're already discussing expansion, which is really, in my opinion, it's the best you could hope for. I think rightfully so. They're not jumping into new chatter yet. I wouldn't either. We're going into the World Cup. You really want everybody to focus on that anyway. And that said, I feel like this was a really great setup. If you are a consummate follower of American rugby and you're going from watching this, having your little cool off period, we're about to see the internationals, which we're going to discuss in a minute. And also watching the men. It's a really great time. It's a really great like intermediary right here. And I think it's a really great lead in to what we hope are some improved performances. And it may or may not be starring some of the people you saw in that final.
Colia, what did you think about the venue? If they had selected someplace that wasn't Minnesota, would you have been more likely to go? Did that really impact anything? Did you think this was a great spot?
That looked like a good place, putting it right in the middle of where the league is right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Seemed like a really good idea. One thing I do want to bring up isn't a problem with the venue or even really the production of the league. And this is something that I'm going to contrast with the USA Eagles later, is the highlights. Before coming on this podcast, because we put off discussion of this for a week, I decided to watch the highlights just to refresh my memory. And the highlights reminded me of someone who didn't know much about rugby was the one in charge of cutting the highlights together, because there's a bunch of like mistakes in the middle and just random cuts.
There was a bit of like, this looked like a lot of action was happening. It was like, yeah, it was bad. Actually, you shouldn't have been showing that.
Yeah. But I do have to give them a big plus for having highlights, because the match we're about to talk about still does not have highlights that
I
are.
went and looked. It's wild to me.
It's wild.
Absolutely wild, especially when you come from the desert of women's rugby, or what it used to be in terms of content. Not like this.
Julia, any players you want to highlight from this final? I feel like Denver put in such a good year. Like they were so consistent. Who do you want to highlight from their team as standout players that you want to hear their names mentioned more and at home?
Absolutely. Well, Talia Brody was the player of the cup. And I absolutely agree with that. Fantastic performance. She always puts in an amazing performance. I'm really excited to see her performance. Honestly, when WR comes back as well, I also think that there's a pretty good chance that she's going to be on that plane. So that's great. I'm excited to see that. Obviously, my perennial favorite and the one I always mention, no matter how bad a game she has, she didn't have a bad game, but Mackenzie Hawkins. I'm a huge fan. I am always going to sing the praises of. Had another pretty good day from the tee. Fantastic. Especially watching a lot of as much women's rugby as I do. It's refreshing to have not only a really great captain in Mackenzie Hawkins, but also a reliable kicker, which not every women's team has. So that's really nice.
Gimme kicks. Those were not gimme kicks.
Yeah, or not at all. And then my last one would be Kristen Bitter, who I consider having a bit of her breakout season, I would say. I think this WER season really highlighted her skills. I think that it probably put her on the threshold of being considered when maybe she might not have been. And that's another thing that I really want to praise WER about, is that I feel like it highlights a lot of players that for whatever reason weren't necessarily on the Eagles' radar. I don't know if that's smart in some of these situations. I look at some of these players and wonder why they're not considered. But that said, a lot of highlights of the other talent that we have. It's going to get people's names in front of other professional leagues where they can keep playing. It's going to be great for PWR. But yeah, successful.
Either of you have any last thoughts on the first season of the WER? Any players or moments that you want to highlight from the season? I have to say, I loved it. The nonsense with DAZN, it definitely put a damper on it for me. But
that aside,
overall, like for a first season in the most like niche sport I can imagine, like easily a 9 out of 10.
And I still highlight, you were asking for like my highlight is the opening match. We had the weirdest end ever. And I just think that was,
So good.
I felt like I got, when I was showing friends from other rugby nations or new rugby fans, I got to be like, so you don't see that every day. And like, it's kind of cool. It made everybody very mad, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that's rugby. It made everybody kind of mad, but it was kind of cool.
One thing I enjoyed this, we lost a little bit of this once DAZN lost it, but were crowd shots.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Because it looked, or a lot of the crowds looked like, say, a Sevens tour crowd.
It
Yeah.
did. It looked like
That
everybody was
refreshing.
having fun, which you don't
Yes.
see in European rugby.
Yes,
I
yes.
love it.
It looked like everyone was having a great time.
And because they did so many of those man on the street interviews, especially in the beginning, I don't know if they decided that it was a little bit too loose cannon. I don't know. We're three like consummate rugby fans. That kind of thing doesn't scare us off. But I did really enjoy that, like in the beginning there, especially when they were doing men on the street interviews, some people were just like, yeah, like some girl just like with a lot of muscles walked up to me in the parking lot and was like, do you like rugby? And I was like, I don't know about that. And they were like, come in. And it was just like I was just enticed by a nice muscular woman. And who wouldn't like that?
Some of the right at the beginning,
That's very American rugby.
They did those reactions to the logos and stuff. Even like they tried to get in on the socials early.
Yeah.
I think there were struggles as the season went on, but you know, there's some great impressions from this first season. Either of you, what are you most looking forward to next season?
The next season.
Yeah, it's mostly the next season. I'm really curious where it goes from here. I don't have too many expectations, and I feel like that's the best place to be in. As opposed to, and you know, it's going to be really useful to contrast to MLR, which I know we're going to do because those are two leagues in different parts of their development, and like I've harped before, I think there's a lot to learn. And I think this MLR finale was no different.
Well, the American fixture this weekend was, of course, the men's Eagles facing Belgium for the very first time. Belgium placed just 5th in the most recent European Championship, not the EPCR thing, but the other thing. And on a hot and humid day in the American South, it felt like we had a massive advantage going into this one. Collier, do you agree?
Well, as we talked about last week, the USA Eagles, most of the team was playing MLR, while most of the Belgian team was playing in lower leagues in France. The commentary talked about how this Belgian team was going to bring us a lot of French flair. And one player for Belgium really did. The rest, as we predicted last week, was mainly focused on their pack and their defense. But that match in the first half, just to go through it, ends 14-3 in favor of the Eagles. And in my notes, I've written 6 times, US passing is trash.
Only 6.
That was gonna be like one of my only useful comments. So thank you. I have a few more. I really hope you don't hit them.
Well, let me set us up though, because I had a poetic bit because it was, of course, a sultry day. The trees kind of sadly sagging like they were a set for a Tennessee Williams play. Do either of you have experiences in the Carolinas?
South Carolina, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, North Carolina.
I don't know if you want to be playing rugby there in July.
It's not great. I went to we talked about it in the opening episode. I went to university in Richmond, Virginia. Very similar climate to much of, especially the Research Triangle. I spent some time playing rugby with and around UNC. But oh boy, if you're used to it, you can survive. And I am, being a native of Virginia. But the Belgians weren't ready.
That was an advantage.
The heat was...
It's not comparable to anything in Europe.
It's really not.
Well, as they like to say, it's not the heat, it's the stupidity. Oh, wait.
It's the stupidity. Great.
Yes.
But jokes apart, I really was going to say that, like, if you are from a place abroad anywhere where you don't regularly have 85 to 90% humidity, like I really can't stress it enough that like you can feel the air. It's really something else.
The venue, of course, was the home stadium for stupidly named Anthem in the MLR, a team 2 seasons in with no wins. It's almost like Warren Gatlin is their
But
coach.
all them Eagles.
All them Eagles,
all
though.
them Eagles.
Yes.
None of those wins.
I did want to talk one thing about the venue.
For sure.
And this is a problem that occurs kind of throughout American rugby, particularly, or it's particularly been a problem with the MLR. It happens a lot with the USA Eagles. It happens some when Sevens is in the US. We do a very, very, very poor job of putting fans on the side opposite the TV camera.
Yes.
It makes it look like there's no one there.
Which has been an annoying and perplexing thing that we've actually noticed across a few leagues. I admit that I don't watch a ton of the men's overseas. I watch the men's here, but not overseas.
But all South African games in the URC look like
all
that.
South African games are that way. All PWR games are that way for some reason until they finally flipped it at some stadiums.
Yes.
Really, it's really detrimental.
It seems
really
like an easy flip too. Like maybe I'm just a production ignoramus or something, but it seems like it'd be pretty easy.
Yes.
It's always it's made me wonder if they do it for the sake of, and it made me start thinking about this in WER. I wondered if they were doing it for the sake of the sound of the crowd when you're recording, but like, okay, I'd rather see than hear, but
yeah,
my only guess.
It just looked like there might have been 200 people there, and
it's not good.
There were, based on reports, 4,000 to 5,000 people there.
Wow.
And I really hope that they don't have the same problem.
Degree day in Charlotte.
Good point.
And Julie, I really hope that they don't have this. I just don't have that they don't have this problem at Audi Field in 2 weeks' time. I will be reporting live, but if it's perplexing, I will be excited to be able to bring us real angles.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'll be there the DC game.
Nice.
Yeah, DC doubleheader. I'm stoked. I think they know where their bread is buttered and they flipped it now, so it's women first and then the men. And I was like, great. So I'll be several beers in and I will be enjoying the men.
Well, this match it was 36 to 17 by the end, a massive result, massively
yeah,
needed
still enjoyable.
result. That score was after 2, as Kolya told me in our chat, wonder tries by Belgium. Boy, howdy.
And then when you watched them, you agreed.
They were. Guys just falling down like, I'll just kind of swing near your leg, that kind of thing. Who wants to start first? Some reactions to this sweaty home victory.
Yeah, there were the second half was a much better half for the USA. We started, or HBGT took control of the match. He set up some very nice moves. Ali Khan making his debut, coming on as an injury replacement early on in the match, didn't really settle in until the second half, got a try on his debut. Our St. Mary's Gales contingent of Besag, Helu, and who's the other one? And Lopetti all got tries. So a hat trick of tries for the St. Mary's Gales.
Yeah. Life University must be in crisis mode right now.
Oh yeah.
Lindenwood found shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Julia, what about you? Any reactions? Any highlights for you?
I mean, so from somebody not knowing everything as well, I'm kind of immersing myself as we go in our season of this podcast. That said, I did know the overarching problems that the team has been facing. I would absolutely agree with Coley on most fronts. I worried and disappointed with handling. I understand that in terms of skills taught and skills you can acquire and perfect on a shorter term, that's not one of them. Understandable. But that said, I was much happier with continuity in the second half. It was a problem that tempo had, in my opinion, been a problem in the first half. In terms of game control. Overall, I would say, in my limited mastery of the men's team, I would say game tempo and control has always been a bit of a problem. It's something you gain with experience. You've got to be playing together a lot. It's a problem that we face in USA Rugby.
Yeah.
But that said, it felt like it was being improved. I'm not sure on what. I'm not sure if it's the team improving together. If it's an improvement coming top down from a coach. I would be really happy if I say that because I'd be really happy if that's the case. I think we'll find that out after we see the performance against England, which I'm now more excited about than I would have been if the performance hadn't have been as strong against Belgium as it was. No, I'll be honest. I'm not thrilled that England is one of the ones on their docket this year. That sucks. That sucks for them. Like, it just feels.
It will be a greatly reduced England.
It will be a greatly reduced England, but even still, they fancy them. What?
Yeah, that just beat Argentina this week again.
Yeah.
Right, and one that has stated many times out in the open that, like, our intention is to prove that, like, we're not just one squad deep, that, like, our depth could absolutely come in. I mean, they want to put off the strength that the Red Roses have, if I can make the comparison.
Yeah.
But of just that we can be missing 7, 8, 9 people at minimum, and we can still field an absolutely new team that can blow anybody out of the water. I think whatever performance they pull off against USA isn't going to be indicative.
You're saying
England need to make any.
Wish they were. You're saying England wish they were France.
Yes. Honestly, I'm happy to say that for the men's. Absolutely, they do. Well, they hope they were. They wish they were South Africa, but if we say that, they'll kick us off the internet.
Yeah. On your coaching point that you made, one thing I did notice and wanted to bring up is one of the things that really caused us to settle down in the second half is that our scrummaging changed its strategy almost completely. In the first half, we had a dominant scrum, but the referee was penalizing Jack Iscaro over and over and over again for going early, which is something that happens when you have a much bigger guy against a smaller guy. It's something that a referee can sometimes kind of try to level the playing field by watching for that early push. And Iscaro,
you can shepherd them, yeah.
That. In the second half, we changed that strategy completely, and our scrum just dominated them.
That's a really good point. I didn't put that together.
Well, my beloved Mitch Wilson, he had a bit of a howler of a game. He was abject by the end. He was so frustrated. And what's with the weird gauzy stickums that, like, don't stick to his elbows? He did set up a gorgeous try by virtue of his hard-headedness. He's always going to give you 100% effort. He'll just try to bull through you sometimes, and sometimes it weirdly works. I just love him so much, but it was a poor showing.
Yeah, there were a few Eagles who are probably worried about their place in the coming match against Spain. That was
a feeling that I had.
One that I would say I would almost guarantee is not going to start is going to be Toby Fricker. And unfortunately, that probably means that Rufus McLean is going to start against Spain. Because Toby Fricker had a just really poor match.
Really mediocre was what I was going to say. It was just a very middling performance.
Yeah, my impression was he was trying too hard. It almost. So I used to accuse AJ McGinty of being guilty of this, and it looked like Toby was doing this, where he's like, "Okay, I'm from this different background. I'm better than everybody, so I need to do more. I'm going to show them that I can do everything." And instead, when you try to do too much, you end up doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't connect it to McGinty like you did, but yeah.
I did not like the injury to Sam Gala. He's one of our few young prospects I really have faith in. Like, he's a find, and but I don't think it looked too bad. Of course, if there's no highlights, there certainly aren't going to be releasing injury information.
Yes, and it was positive that his replacement Ali Khan did play really well in the second half and did get a try on debut.
Yeah, that was a real highlight.
For sure.
And I think like it felt like it tangibly like upped morale, which you can't say for every player, and that's really lovely.
I admit too, I was late. I was worried we were going to take our foot off the gas, and I don't
Yeah.
think they ever did. And so that was also a positive sign for me based on what I've seen the last couple of years.
I mean, it's very much that's very much something that has been in the conversation when there's comparison and contrasting of the teams that are around us. And now is an optimal, I think, time to note that there are also potential upsets in the standings. And not that world ranking matters that much. We're not looking at a World Cup for the men until 27.
I'll get to it.
But exactly, but still it is something worth mentioning. And there are caveats to make there too, but still the movement could be really important, especially for I think what we view as a USA men's on the precipice. It's nice to have a little hope.
Yeah, we scored 6 tries on the day, but only converted 3. Is that a cause for concern?
Yes, in my view, because it follows a trend with McGinty with the Eagles. His last few matches for the Eagles, he has not been great from the tee.
It's true.
And unfortunately, I hope it was just a one-time thing. When Hilsenbeck came on, he still looked a bit ghostly from his miss against the Free Jacks for Chicago.
Okay, here's your
That's really
ESPN style
good.
question. I queued this up for the American listeners. Did the Eagles win this game, or did Belgium, Les Diables Noirs, lose this game?
I have my answer, but Kolya first.
I really think the US won this match. There were a lot of points, especially in the first half, where Belgium could not deal with our line speed on defense.
Yep.
And if the passing was actually going to hand in that first half, we easily could have scored 4 tries by halftime.
Yeah.
But which was borne out by the changes made in the second half. Belgium, other than their fullback, who scored 1 try and set up another in the second half, other than him and their pack in the first half, they weren't at our level.
Julia?
That was more or less what I was going to say. It didn't feel at any point, even in the early, I would say like 10 to 15 minutes, where there were several like bright pops from Belgium. It never felt that Belgium had this in hand. It felt like it was an aggrieved win insofar as you really had to work for it, and they really made you wait till about the 60-minute mark to really feel confident. But I never at any point, it never felt like it was going to swing decidedly the other way. Which is good. That's really going to buoy USA men's spirit, the men's spirits, which is great. Again, considering this, I'm really glad that they're having this summer national series. I still, and I don't mean to bang on, but it's so weird to have England thrown in there in the middle. But since it is, with all that said, since Spain, in my opinion, is the one that you should have your eye on, really, if I'm a men's Eagle, I'd be looking at Spain. So this would feel good. This would be some nice momentum.
Okay, I just want to take a moment to remind listeners that if you like what you're hearing, do us a favor and like and subscribe, all the usual things. If you would tell a friend about us, it'd really help to grow the show. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. I believe we're finally on iTunes. And of course, you can find us on the Twitters at Maul Street Pod. That's MAUL Street Pod. And as always, thanks for your support. It's been going great, and we're having so much fun. Finally, it's our goal to find some grassroots stuff to discuss each week. We kind of already set this up. This week, got to be a little more serious than we usually are because there was a genuine tragedy not too far away from where Kolya is living right now. Flash floods caused a serious and shocking loss of life, especially at some summer camps. Kolya, I know you prepared something for this. Give us your grassroots for the week.
Yes. So the community in Central Texas and the Texas Hill Country has really been coming together with this. There have, of course, been all the memes about Texas FEMA being HEB, our grocery store chain that has sent a bunch of 18-wheelers out to provide disaster relief.
Wow.
Were there before the government got there, things like that. But the rugby community's also been stepping up. If you are in the San Antonio, Central Texas area, the San Antonio Riveters, the women's team here in San Antonio, is setting up a donation drive at their practice this Thursday. If you're in the area, please go to that. That's at Mission Concepcion Sports Complex. Come by, give it something. There's also the Texas State University rugby team up in San Marcos has been sending people down every day.
Wow.
To help volunteer, help do search and rescue. There's a bunch of good guys at the Hill Country Blues Rugby Club, which is in Kerrville. It's only about a 6-year-old team that they've all been helping out. And if you want listeners to help out the area, the Community Foundation of the Texas Hill Country is accepting donations. You can find them at Community Foundation Kerrville or Kerr County, Kerr Flood Relief. They will take your donations and make sure they go to people who are actually helping instead of people who are there just to get in the way.
100%.
Sending rugby players to help, it's like Canada in the World Cup in Japan. It's like that's who you want out there trying to clear debris and help out. Like that's who you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's great stuff. Let's see. This is traditionally where we do our predictions. I haven't spent any time looking at the team sheets. I'm not sure they're out yet.
They aren't out yet.
But I'm pretty.
They're not out yet.
Without saying them, I feel pretty sure Spain's going to kick our butts. Julia, you could tell how much it hurt Hugh this week to tell us that his Wales men are only one place ahead of the Eagles after losing a rough one in Eddie Jones' evil empire. If we magically beat Spain and Wales lose again, we could be ahead of them for the first time in rugby history, I believe. This must be a very weird thing for both of you.
I'll let Kolya take this. For the women, we've actually been trading it back and forth a bit. I mean, there's a whole other episode in talking about the problems on the Wales men's program.
And the Wales women's program.
I have a whole podcast about that.
Yes.
But that said, unfortunately, before I am friends with all of these Welsh people that I know and love, hi everybody that I know and love, you produce our podcast, thank you. Other than that, I am an American first. I'm kind of stoked. There's a chance. That said, you asked for predictions. I do not think we're going to beat Spain. I don't think that. I would need to see the team sheets, I guess, but like they would need to be missing like half their players, and they're not. So
maybe lupus will break out in camp. Kolya, what about you? Are you feeling very strange? You must be torn looking at the position of the Wales men right now.
Unfortunately, if Wales don't win this next test, you might have to say no start to the Welsh men's team for the next few years.
I mean, that's what they're all saying as well. Like, I don't feel that is hyperbole. That's what I've heard from most diehard Wales fans.
It's weird because obviously I want America to get better. I want us, the higher in the rankings we can get, the better. We have a World Cup coming. Like, we need this to build. But Anyone who
But
listens
not
to
as
anyone who listens
yeah.
to Scrum of the Earth will know my world seems right when Wales are good at rugby. My world seems right when Australia are good at rugby. My
Feels
world
nice.
feels weird right now, and this really just makes it just that much weirder.
Hey,
They're in a difficult state. I mean, yeah.
about moving the six nations, going up to 7, maybe 8, maybe
The Six Nations and the USA.
USA.
The
Yes,
seven
They would
nations.
rather die. I mean, both men's and women's coats have had this argument. Everybody knows the team that belongs in the Six Nations that isn't. For women, it's Spain. For men, it's Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Wales women have a match not too terribly long from now. I think it's also going to go really badly. So
But the Wales women are still somehow more fun to watch.
more fun to watch. And this is not for this podcast whatsoever at all, but I will say that I just universe crossover, rap pod universe crossover from Women's Rugby Treehouse. We did convince by ourselves, us three, we did convince WRU to make Alex Callender captain. So
I noticed that. That was great. That was a good move.
yeah, that was my podcast mostly that did it.
Yeah.
Because we're tastemakers.
Yeah. Speaking of Spain, we do have that match coming up this weekend.
I'm about to get to it right now. This weekend, we're back in Charlotte to host Spain, as you said, a team that's been beaten by Georgia, Fiji, Samoa, and you guessed it, the USA over their last 10 fixtures. When I say it out loud, maybe there's hope. This is a big one for the men. Do we have a shot? Collier, it sounds like you want to chime in. Are you ready to say yes, that we have a shot?
Yeah. So we've talked about the scheduling for this summer test series. And I've always seen it as Belgium is the match we should beat or should win. England is a money churner.
It's the reach.
And Spain is the aspirational.
Yeah.
Spain is
absolutely
what we want to win. That's if we play everything right, we have a chance.
Yeah.
I
think so.
I am greatly worried about this match because there's a lot of really, really good players on Spain. I talked last week about Orecoechea. Sorry, tongue tripping on my Basque. But he has been tearing it up for Biarritz, even with Biarritz's off-field problems. There's a bunch of really good players from the Madrid teams. There's a new cap from Ordizia Rugby up in the Basque Country in Spain. Shout out to the American coaching staff over there at Ordizia, who are also connected to the Oinkari Basque dancers, who you can see if you're in Boise, Idaho at High Aldi at the end of the month.
That is a deep cut. See, that is why we bring you this content every week.
See, yeah, the thing is, that's kind of cool. And now I'm like, could I be?
I know. I'm like, how long will that take?
That's really cool. Unfortunately, I love stuff like that. That's what Cooley and I are always bonding over.
Did you know that Georgia Miller of the Black Ferns was like internationally rated Highland dancer?
Yes, I did. Did you know also Paige Ferries from Canada was also a competitive Highland dancer? In fact, so much so that when she got to the absolute top of both sports, they were like, you have to choose. And she was like, I'm going to do rugby probably.
I didn't know Highland dancing was competitive. Like, how do you talk trash?
Oh, it is the same way that that Irish dancing is. Oh, they had a whole show about bunheads. They're
yes.
I don't fuck with dancers.
My wife can tell you about how competitive Irish dancing is.
Yeah,
Really?
right? See, okay, I don't feel so crazy. Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's also really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for I don't know, somebody else. For me, it's fortunate.
And just quickly misspoke, Ordizia's club is mainly Spanish managed, but they do have some Americans working with them.
Fair.
We'll take it. We don't have a lot. We'll take it.
I do know one of them.
By the way, we're hot and heavy on the Basque references. I gotta
You gonna
ask,
show us?
Colia, are you a Toulon supporter?
I am not a Toulon supporter.
Does not surprise me.
As we talked off podcast a couple weeks ago, I am a Biarritz Olympique Pays Basque supporter.
Nice.
Part of my ethnicity is Basque and just happens to be on the opposite side of the divide from the Biarritz Bayonne divide.
Interesting.
However, I still like seeing Bayonne doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And if you haven't listened to La Peña Bayona in Basque, you really should.
Oh,
Gonna now.
Has a great version of it that does the French, the ale ale, but then switches over at the end to the whole tune in Basque,
wow.
in Euskara.
And
That's
you can just
extremely
sit there
cool.
and bask in the sound. Uh, sorry.
Okay.
It's not an episode until I've thrown in a dad joke. I do want our predictions. I'll go ahead and start. I think we're not going to win. I think it'll be 15-27 in favor of Spain. Julia, what do you got?
Yeah, I think that's really fair. That was about more or less the margin that I was thinking. Yeah, I was gonna give USA like 17 after seeing the performance, but yeah, I was gonna say, let's say 25 for Spain. Yeah.
Colia, what about you?
I'll say USA 17, Spain 23.
17, 20. Wow.
So Spain by 6.
Oh, that would be more painful out of all our
It
predictions.
really would, especially
that's the one that
because
would hurt.
in my mind, I'm like, I see at least one like painful kick that hurts my feelings. And I think
That was the only weird thing in the comms this weekend. At one point, we were up by 9 and then went up by more, and they said, "Okay, it's finally a 2-score game." I was like,
Mm,
interesting."
huh.
Well, of course, we've got England after Spain. They'll be looking for some revenge after the whole, Tea Party thing. I mean, old rivalries, they die hard. I honestly tried to figure out how the results from the summer series could impact our qualification pathway for Australia, but I actually don't think the series will matter at all. I think it's all about the Pacific Nations Cup in September. Do either of you have a handle on this?
Not, I think it generally comes down to the matches with Canada. Though those are the first set of qualifiers for us, because remember, the World Cup is expanding.
Yes.
And we're currently in that bracket where we'll have probably a tier 1 team, a tier 2 team, and then someone below us in our pool.
I would take it. Julia, are our men going to be in Australia?
That was where I was gonna go if we just continued on that same train of thought. I do think it's gonna come down to the Pacific nations. It almost always does come down to Canada, and it's the same way for both the men and the women. But I think that it's gonna go similarly to how it did for us last year. Are we gonna be there? I think yes, possibly by the skin of our teeth, possibly by a repechage.
I don't think my heart can handle losing another repechage.
Yeah, I think that if we went this time, we would win. I mean, it'll depend on who else is there, but in terms
Right.
of like predictability, I think that the answer will be yes, but I don't think that it will be early in the qualification process.
Yeah.
Well, both of you are coaches. If we lose against Spain and then get drubbed by England, is there somewhere, Scott Lawrence, that you can turn that into a positive?
I mean, you can always call anything a learning opportunity. I don't know. I don't have a better dressing for that. I do think that there will be drubbings, and we can hope that they'll learn from it. You're going to encounter play styles like whatever you see England A bring, and I don't know.
Oh no,
learning opportunity.
All of us froze at the same time.
We'll talk more about this next week, I'm sure.
Exactly. That's really where I'm at, is that like I don't feel like I have a grasp on it. I really want to see one more.
But what I don't want to see is a bunch of our people with a lot of caps
Mm.
for that England match. I want it to be a lot of generally a younger squad with fewer caps to see who's ready to make that jump.
Great point.
That's a really good call.
Yeah, AJ should not be
I
playing
wish
in
I
that
had
match.
thought of it that way. That's
Yeah.
a way better way of thinking of it. And you can use that game in a completely different way than I was thinking.
Any final thoughts before we call it a week?
It's been fun.
It's been fun. Looking forward to talking more what we get to see next week.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining us here on the Mall Street Journal. I'm David. Thanks to Kolya and Julia. Julia, so glad to have you back. I'm pleased you left New Jersey unscathed.
I'm so glad to be back. I'm so thankful that we won that entire sevens tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just thank my
your hat
family.
trick, I think.
I was gonna say thank my family, thank my coaches. Colia was there coaching me.
I'm told that you gave it 110% and came out with a W.
I did. Dubs in the chat.
Oh, Julia, I'm so sorry that you missed the chance to rant about the incredible Free Jacks victory last weekend. Do you want to take 20 or 30 minutes to kind of explain in depth why they're the greatest team ever?
All I would like to end the podcast on was, weren't they amazing?
Yes.
Chat, think about that while we wrap this up.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you all next week. To all the listeners, if you haven't liked and subscribed yet, do yourself and frankly, us a favor, do all those things. If you could tell a friend or two, that'd be great. I feel like we're having a really good time with the show, and the more, the merrier. So to all of you across the globe, cheers. Talk to you soon, and be well.